Hi everyone. Now we are going to discuss about typhoid, which is one of the type of food and waterborne diseases. Typhoid is also called as typhoid fever or enteric fever. And this typhoid fever is mainly caused by a bacteria called Salmonella typhi. And this typhoid is a word that is derived from the Greek where the typhos means smoke. The typhoid fever is going to be acquired by the ingestion of food or water contaminated by feces of infected humans or animals. Britonia in 1826 presented a detailed study of this disease, and in 1829 Mr. Louis Pasteur named this disease as typhoid. In 1880, Ebert described about the typhoid bacillus, that is nothing but Salmonella typhi. And in the year 1884, Gefeke isolated this typhoid bacillus in pure culture. Then moving to the causative organism. So what is a causative organism? Obviously it is Salmonella typhi. That means typhoid fever is caused by several virulent serotypes of Salmonella typhi. And it is important to remember the most important member of the genus is Salmonella. And this belongs to the family called Enterobacteriaceae, and the genus consists of more than 2,300 serotypes that were currently known. And the organism causing human diseases belong to Salmonella enterococci, whereas Salmonella bunbury is a non-human pathogen. And here is a picture of a Salmonella typhi. Here you can see the long flagella throughout the body. Okay, so that is a special feature of it where we call it as peritrichus. Coming to the morphology, Salmonella are gram-negative bacilli and they measure about 1.3 into 0.5 mm in size. They are motile with peritrichate flagella. I told you if the flagella are present throughout the body, we call that condition as peritrichus. And these are non-capsulated, that means no capsule is present, non-spore forming, that is they won't produce any spores, and they possess small fimbria-like structures also, and they are facultative anaerobic. And Salmonella has two sets of antigens which is useful in the detection of serotyping. And the first one is called as somatic or O antigen, which is nothing but the capsule, that is the outer polysaccharide layer, that is LPS, and this is a heat stable polysaccharide. Whereas the other one is a H antigen, which is also called as flagellar antigen. Here you can see, and these are strongly immunogenic and induces antibody formation rapidly and in high titers following infection or immunization. This flagellar antigen is of a dual nature, which is occurring in one of the two phases. Then moving to the cultural characters, typhoid bacilli are aerobic as well as facultative anaerobic, and they can readily grow on ordinary media, and they require the pH of about 6 to 8, and the optimum temperature is 15 to 41 degrees centigrade. On nutrient agar medium or on the blood agar medium, they are going to form the colonies above 2 to 3 millimeter in size, and their colonies are circular, grayish white. If you observe here, you can find it grayish white, moist, convex with a low convex, smooth and translucent. On McConkey agar and deoxycitrate media, they are going to form about 1 to 3 millimeter colonies and pale yellow and colorless. On Wilson and Blair Smith sulfite medium, Z black colonies with a metallic sheen is going to be observed. So here you can see this is a colony that was present on Wilson and Blair Smith sulfite medium. And bacilli are going to be killed at about 55 degrees centigrade in 1 hour or at 60 degrees centigrade in 15 minutes. That's why we are asked, if you are having the proper cooking, we won't get effect of this typhoid. Then moving to the pathogenesis. So this is how the total fecal oral route, how this bacteria enters and what is happening in the system. That is nothing but our pathogenesis or the thing. The typhoid bacilli gain entry into the body through the contaminated water or food supplies, isn't it? And a very low doses of Salmonella typhi establishes the infection. Generally, more number of the dose of the pathogen should be established to cause the infection in certain bacteria. But here, the Salmonella typhi with of a very low dose is enough to cause the infection. So once you are going to have the consumption of contaminated water or food, these bacteria, on reaching the gut, the bacilli attaches themselves to the microvilli of ileal mucosa and penetrate the lamina propria and submucosa, where they are phagocytosed by our neutrophils and macrophages. Now, they resist intracellular killing and multiply in these cells, that is in the neutrophils and the macrophages, and invade the bloodstream, and a transient bacteremia follows. That means if bacteria present in the bloodstream, we call it as bacteremia. During this period, the bacilli are seeded in the liver, gallbladder, spleen, bone marrow, lymph nodes, lungs, and kidneys, where further multiplication is going to be seen. And after multiplication in these organs, bacilli pass into the blood, causing a second and heavier bacteremia, that is of heralding the onset of clinical illness. And one more thing here is, as bile is a good culture media for this bacilli, it multiplies abundantly in the gallbladder and is discharged continuously into the intestine, where it involves the Peyer's patches and lymphoidal follicles of the ileum. And these become inflamed under necrosis and swell off, leaving behind characteristic typhoid ulcers. And this incubation period varies from 5 to 21 days. And the disease is mainly characterized by fever and frequently abdominal symptoms. So this is the overall pathogenicity or pathogenesis of this typhoid. Very simply telling, here I have wrote you that once this bacteria enters into the gut, that is our small intestine, so it may be of residing from 5 to 21 days or 10 to 14 days. Here they are going to colonize and penetrate the epithelial layer, spread to the lymphatic system in Peyer's patches of the intestine and forming the ulcers, and disseminated to the circulatory system, and there it is going to spread to the liver, gallbladder, all those things. And the bacteria multiply, as I told you, in the phagocytic cells, that is neutrophils, and as well as the macrophages. And the organisms grows and causes the damage to the liver, gallbladder, and sometimes kidney, spleen, and the lungs. So these conditions we can observe in the immunocompromised persons, especially HIV patients. And most of the HIV positive cases, that is AIDS condition, is because of this typhoid also. It is one of the cause for the death of the AIDS patient. And after multiplication, as I told you, they are going to pass into the blood, causing a second and heavier bacteremia, heralding the onset of clinical symptoms like abdominal pain, fever, all those things. And if it is going to be ill treated, because of this one, you are going to have the typhoid ulcers also. Then what are the symptoms of this typhoid? The common signs and symptoms of typhoid fever usually develop within 2 to 3 weeks after exposure to the bacteria. And these symptoms include high fever ranging from 103 to 104 degrees centigrade. You may have some sort of a stomach pain, then you have headache, then intestinal bleeding, poor appetite, rash or pink spots on the body, constipation, diarrhea, fatigue, and swollen abdomen. So these are the main symptoms or the common symptoms that we come across in the typhoid infection. Then moving to the laboratory diagnosis, that means how we can diagnose it, this typhoid disease in the laboratory means it is mainly done by isolation and identification of the causative organism from a sample of the patient's blood, feces, urine, bone marrow, etc. And you can have the demonstration of circulating antigen by the test called as Vidal test. So it can be a slide test or it can be a tube test. And the third one is by the demonstration of antibodies. So these are the three main things by which we can identify this typhoid bacteria. Then coming to the prevention and control. So obviously what are the preventive measures that we have to follow to control this typhoid fever is proper sewage disposal, because as it is a water and food contaminated one, so we should have the proper sewage disposal. Then protected water supply, then handling of our food hygienically, use of pasteurized milk, and complete isolation of the patients. So those who get infected, they have to be completely isolated, and periodic examination of the food handlers. So those who are handling the foods, they should be tested frequently to confirm whether they are having any effect of this typhoid or not. Then vaccination is another device for disease prevention. So there are certain vaccines which can be useful to prevent this typhoid. That is a TAB vaccine, then vaccine of purified antigen, that is typhim, then oral vaccine. So these are three different types of the vaccines which are used in prevention of this typhoid fever. And this topic of vaccines of typhoid we will discuss in detail in another video. Thank you for this one. I hope so you understood very well. Thank you.